Good afternoon. Welcome back if you were with us this morning, and welcome to the Adobe Educators Conference. I'm Caitlin Hartley, one of the customer success managers on the Adobe education team here in Sydney, Australia. We're thrilled to kick off our afternoon program with a keynote that speaks directly to the heart of what it means to teach, inspire, and prepare students for the future. The title of this keynote is Storytelling as a Skill Set, Creativity, Critical Thinking, and Digital Fluency in Action. And our wonderful speaker, Manuela Franceschini, brings remarkable depth of experience to this conversation. So we're very excited and lucky to have her. Before joining Adobe, Manuela spent 15 years traveling around the globe as a foreign correspondent and multimedia storyteller for Latin America's largest television network. Her work took her to the front lines of global events, where she crafted compelling narratives that connected audiences across cultures and continents. So storytelling is really at the heart of her passions and her skill sets. She then was an academic at Bond University, leading the transformation of journalism and international relations subjects and embedding real-world storytelling practice into the curriculum. Now she's the senior pedagogical evangelist at Adobe, working at the intersection of pedagogy and emerging technologies and partnering with our institutions in this region to explore how AI and digital storytelling can empower students to build creativity, digital fluency, and critical thinking skills, very important for our evolving workforce. Everyone could please join me in welcoming Manuela, and I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you, Caitlin. Thank you so much for a generous introduction. Thank you, everyone, for having your time and attention today. It's a pleasure to talk to you. Let me start sharing my screen. It's a pleasure to talk to you about something that is so close to my heart. And I think it will speak directly to your passions as well as educators for many reasons. But as Caitlin said, I am Manuela Franceschini. I'm a journalist, a digital storyteller, and an educator. And I want to invite you for this 30 minutes or so that we have together. I want to invite you to start these 30 minutes with a reflection. When was the last time that a story changed the way you think? Do not overthink too much. It can be about a book you're reading. It can be a series that you just watched, maybe a conversation that you had with a colleague this morning, even a student story or a student engagement. Did it change the way you think a little bit? And I want to invite you to think, what did that story make you realize or see differently? Did it invite you to contrast your own experiences with what that person was telling you? Did it somehow then make you reflect about perceptions that you had about yourself or the world? Was it maybe the content of the story or the way in which that story found you? Did it help you understand something that was not clear for you? Was it a very well-written email that you just read today that actually helped to clarify something? Did it shift your perspective, even a tiny small way? And I want you to drop in the chat one word, if you can, that captures that feeling of like how that story left you. And I'll share mine with you. I think every time I prepare a presentation for any audience or for anyone, and that's a story, I'm preparing a story for you, I feel like that preparation on itself, telling that story in a different way, makes me think about storytelling always in a better way, I think. So my word would be enhancement. After preparing this presentation for you today, I felt like I saw once again the power of storytelling in a way that, in subtle ways that I didn't see before. And I also want to remind you of something that is the core to my teaching philosophy. It guided me in my years as educators, although I don't think we never stop being an educator. But Paulo Freire is an incredible pedagogue, Brazilian like myself. He's one of the greatest thinkers of education that we had in the world. And he has this quote that says that to be is to be in relation to the world and to others. That's the way he saw education. And I think that that's so powerful because it invites us to think that whatever we think, whatever knowledge we have, do not exist without a contrast. We need to reflect about the world and others in order for that and for ourselves to make sense. And that's what storytelling is. Storytelling is a relational practice. It offers you a context, a scenario to make sense of things, to make sense of self, make sense of society. And when we apply that in education, can you immediately see how powerful that can be? And we'll explore that in multiple ways today. But when you bring those lenses, when you bring that relational casuality to education, you really put students at the center of their learning journey. You are seeing them not as blank canvas, but as individuals who have living experiences and capabilities. And that should meet the knowledge that you want to transmit to them or uncover with them. When you acknowledge that, you also respect them as storytellers, as potential storytellers. When you ask your students to communicate their knowledge in the shape of a narrative, of a story, they are not just describing what they've learned. They are positioning themselves in relation to the knowledge that they acquired. And that's what makes it so powerful. They are also reflecting about themselves, their peers, where that knowledge sits in the world, in their society. That way, knowledge is more meaningful, more demonstrable, more personal, more memorable. And let me tell you a story. That will be a good bridge to what I want to tell you. As Caitlin said, I was teaching and researching before joining Adobe. That was around 5 years ago. 2020 was my latest year teaching. That was pre-pandemic, remember? Pre-AI and pre-pandemic. It feels like a completely different universe, and possibly it was. But I like to think every time I stepped into my classroom that I was inviting my students to walk in this uncharted map. That's the way I like to see the curriculum, for a couple of reasons. One, I have in me this feeling, and I think all of you as educators will relate to that, of feeling excited about something that we don't know yet. Uncovering something and learning something is exciting on itself as an act of discovery. So I wanted to bring that atmosphere, that idea. But also because when I was introducing a new idea, a new concept, I wanted them to start feeling like a new figure forming and something making sense. But then, when I had to ask my students to demonstrate their knowledge about what we uncovered together, I had to normally go to traditional ways of assessment. Remember, that was 2020. There was, of course, lots of discussion about more authentic and genuine ways of assessing students, but that was not that popular. I was teaching journalism subjects and international relations subjects. So you can see that are like, although in humanities, quite different in terms of what the university saw as those two cohorts, as like a creative and a non-creative area. Although I completely disagree with that, and you see why. But anyway, most likely I had to ask my students to write an academic paper, which has its place and it's important for its own reasons, but it was not much more than that, like academic paper, a report, or an exam. And I couldn't help myself but feeling that I was asking my students to take a photo of that map that we uncovered together. And that was it. Detached from it, what do you remember? Look from afar and tell me what you can see. In contrast, when I could engage with storytelling, I was actually inviting my students to walk the land. I was not that concerned about the photo, about what they saw, but how they got there, not about where they are, how they got there. I wanted to know what they discovered, what they struggled with, how they connected it to themselves, to the world beyond the classroom, how they connected to their own stories, how they connected to their living experiences and their own capabilities that they bring to the classroom. And that makes this whole experience so much more engaging and richer. And you've noticed that I've been saying storytelling so far, but we are in 2025, and the newest literacy around storytelling is digital literacy. It feels weird even saying digital, right? Like, what is not digital? But if we go back and just remember on the journey of storytelling, that will make more sense if we break it down. And each shift of storytelling counts as a new literacy, as a new set of skills inside storytelling. We start with oral storytelling tradition, which our indigenous communities are the masters of it. The way we transmit knowledge, the way we transmit our traditions, right? It's very communal. It has the sense of community, quite memorable, and that idea of relational perspective that we just talked about. Then you have the written form of storytelling, which it eternalizes the knowledge, right? It transforms that into something permanent, concrete. But it's also more analytical, more critical, and normally very lonely. It is a lonely process, and for good reasons, but it is like the way when you write, when you read, is more of a lonely process. And then since the 2000s and with the advancement of a modern society and computers and so on, it unlocks a new possibility in terms of storytelling, and that's multimodality. That's the use and the combination of oral, written, and other visual storytelling to tell a compelling narrative that is combining video, audio, images, words, and then packaged in the new names and new things that didn't exist before, like a podcast, a web narrative. It's also more interactive. You need to engage with your audience because you have the possibility to do that, right? Like it's a channel that has like a two ways, it's more open-ended. And it's highly transferable to the economy and the world that we live in. So I'll argue that digital storytelling is the newest literacy because it really combines critical thinking, creativity, and digital fluency in motion, in action. If storytelling was making learning more personal, more memorable, now digital storytelling takes this to a timeless practice and really gives students skills that they need to succeed and to thrive in a digital AI age. And not only students, but anyone, even us, right? Like as people who are in the workforce. And that's what I would call a toolbox of skills. Think of digital storytelling as the soft power, something so important in diplomacy. So important. Digital storytelling, I will break it down into education in two ways, okay? One is the context, is the lenses. See digital storytelling as the stage in which you're giving your students the possibility to apply their knowledge. We know as educators that when a student really learn something is when they are able to take that content out of the environment where you gave to them, out of their own universe, and apply it to something else, apply in a different area, apply in a different context. That's what digital storytelling can offer, that space, those lenses. And I'm not talking about writing a novel or a fiction narrative. I'm talking about students expressing their knowledge in a way that has some sort of a narrative and multimodalities. So it can be a digital report, a video essay, a photo essay, an infographic, a podcast, a web narrative. More likely, there will be some commonalities into that. As I told you, they are narrative driven, just some sort of beginning, middle, and end, which most of things that we do have. It, as I said, can combine text, image, audio, any artifact that is possible to be created. That's very powerful. This has the chance to be public facing, to go beyond yourself as a marker, beyond yourself as an educator. You are no longer the only audience of that piece. That is so powerful as an asset professionally and personally for students because it's something tangible that they can take with them beyond the work they are doing in the classroom. It is highly reflective. When you tell a story, you need to reflect. You need to pause and think how that relates to multiple items and where that knowledge sits into that. That's number one, the stage, the context. Number two is the natural outcome, the natural end result of this process, which is fostering all those skills that we used to call soft skills. Now we call it as transferable skills, just because soft had a bad connotation as something less important. And those are the transferable skills. They are transferable because they really apply to absolutely anything we do in our lives, personally and professionally, are key core skills for everyone as individuals. Number one, communication. The students need to think who they are telling that to, the idea of having an audience, and then that informing your choice of everything: words, tone of voice, level of content, visuals, empathy. As someone who told stories for a very long time, I can tell that few things are more powerful to become an empathetic person than telling stories. And that do not mean only telling others stories, like telling the stories of others people's lives, but telling any story, because you need that perspective taking. You need to take a step back and look at a bigger picture. And that's on itself the first step to be more empathetic. So that continuous exercise really shapes that on you. Creativity, because they are creating something that didn't exist before. Isn't that fantastic? And something they feel proud of. Normally, those projects involve and can welcome collaboration. There's a lot of opportunity for critical thinking. They're deliberate decisions of keeping these parts of the content, taking those ones and connecting that to different aspects. On itself, digital storytelling is a great enabler of digital fluency. Students are with hands-on experience on a multitude of variety of tools, especially engaging with AI in a safe manner as well. And reflection, because again, if you tell a story, you are reflecting about what you want to say or what you want to convey, right? The result is a learning product that is both personally meaningful and professionally valuable, also being something extremely important as part of their learning journey. And I was talking to you about the transferable skills and how important that is. It's not a coincidence that you see since the past like 5 or 10 years or so, this rise on what we call transferable skills. If you look at the World Economic Forum, the Future of Jobs report this year, look at the top 10 skills. I'll go back to the ones that I just listed here as connected to digital storytelling: communication, empathy, creativity, collaboration, critical thinking, digital fluency, and reflection. If you look at the core skills in demand that every employer is looking at for when they are hiring someone, look at the first one: critical thinking. There is resilience, there is leadership, there is creativity, there is technological literacy, digital fluency, there is empathy, there's curiosity. And if you look at the ones projected for fastest growing by 2030, AI, digital fluency is there, creativity, resilience, flexibility, agility. Adobe's own research that we launched also this year about creativity with AI in education gives us also a very good insight on creativity and how this on itself, this one skill, can actually unlock all the other transferable skills. For example, educators were asked, like, when you in your classroom, do you see students evolving or becoming better in their resilience, in their curiosity, etc.? Professors who engage in creative methodologies responded, for example, that 94% of their students were nurturing resilience, in comparison to then professors who were not engaging, saying that only 63% of their students were becoming more resilient. So there is a key correlation on when you engage in creative methodologies, innovative pedagogies in your classroom, how you see a result of the other soft skills, transferable skills also arising in your students. And by creative practices, I really mean approaching content and knowledge for promoting discussions, promoting students to bring their own living experiences and capabilities, drawing connections between different classes, and etc. So there's lots of storytelling here as well. But I want to show you, before we I think we have 10 more minutes, I want to show you a couple of examples of what that's looking like in university that we are engaging with, because that might give you good ideas, but also maybe more questions about how to get there, what works, what doesn't. So let me start with the first one. My first example to you is something that is digital storytelling used to foster connection on the first week of class and beyond, and also to drive personalized education at scale. This is a guide called Digital Storytelling Activities Guide that it was informed by Western Sydney University. We collaborated with them to create this, Caitlin and myself, and we are very proud of it. And this guide is basically 20 activities, all grounded on pedagogy and digital storytelling, inviting students to reflect about who they are, to foster that sense of belonging and connection with their educators and their peers. And that's the first set of activities on connection. The second set of activities in transition, supporting students to identify who they are as learners now at a university or coming from one semester to another. And then finally, goal setting, who they want to be, who they aspire to be, and how can the university help them, or your professors, your peers, help you get there. They are all templated activities, meaning that the students can start from something that exists. It reduces that anxiety of the blank canvas, and it starts from very simple activities, and academics can choose which one they want to use with their cohorts, or they can scaffold and use them all. But this one, for example, is a very simple poster graphics. Do you see the remix button here? You can explore there. The students just click there and they start editing completely. By the way, Caitlin, I don't know if the person should put that in the chat already, but there's a session today at 3 p.m. where you have the hands-on opportunity to explore that further. But that's what the students can do. Just incorporate very easily and quickly some visuals that express who they are. And then if they want to go a little bit further, they can tell a little bit more about their story in the form of like a narrative. And that's what the template looks like. They follow the instructions and just tell about who they are, where they're from, what they aspire, etc. And the idea of that being templated is because it's supposed to be an introduction to digital storytelling, right? Like when they become more confident with this practice, it's easier for them than to just create the whole thing for themselves. But what we are seeing absolutely fantastic is that no work comes back as another one. Students really welcome the opportunity to express themselves and to change this so drastically that every single work is different, even though you gave them one template. And that's the idea, like treat this template. We also always have this disclaimer here. Treat this template as your own. Remix this to make it unique, right? And then you have like many more other activities, and you have the chance to explore that today, but they can create posters, videos, and so on. That's with all, like always with the idea of fostering that connection. And then that we have plenty of assessments that are incorporating digital storytelling. And I'll quickly show you, I will start with this one. That one will speak beautifully to that. Just a second here. This is from Curtin University, and it's a swallowing disorders, speech pathology subject. The students need to recreate a recipe that is suitable for people who have swallowing disorders. But they need to do that, connecting that to their own culture, because that's something important when they are with patients, like what is the patient's culture to refer a recipe. They need to have that in mind. So they do that starting with themselves. They need to choose a recipe and they need to tell the story of that recipe, why that recipe is important for you, what is your emotion connection with that recipe. And students would normally submit this in a Word format, in a written format, but you can see how it elevates these when they have the chance to incorporate the multimodality that digital storytelling allows. So they are here connecting that knowledge from that content to their own stories. And then they have images, photos that they quickly take with their phones, and even like simple videos where they are demonstrating they understood the task, they understood what the professor wanted to explain to them. They need to do a couple of tests to prove that the food is appropriate for consumption for people who have that disorder. So instead of just explaining the methodology, they do it themselves. That's very simple, but very efficient. We also have in the same idea of a template, something that it's called a learning passport, that the idea is that it will be used across the psychology program at Western Sydney University. And the students then collate highlights in different sections of their learning journey, and they keep adding to this portfolio. And again, we added that personal level with who are you and how does this content connect to who you are. I won't go into assurance of learning in these discussions. I know that they don't still do not protect assurance of learning, but it definitely makes assessments more inviting and more engaging. And I think that's something to not be, we cannot lose sight of that. But they have here like a collation throughout the entire degree of knowledge areas. And then you also have annotation. So they also need to annotate what they are learning and what is relevant to them go back and add that to their portfolio. So all templated as well. You have digital narratives in video, for example, the students creating presentations where they then record themselves and speak to the content instead of just submitting something that is more plain. So you have your students' voice, you have their impromptu reflection, such as here. And that's for Torrens. I don't know, Nikki, if you are here. I know that Leanne was here, but that's something that we created with Nikki and the team at Torrens as an idea of a glossary, how students then, they needed to curate an amount of words and explain the meanings of that terminology in a way that their future patients would understand. So we reshape that in a way that they now incorporate their voices as a voiceover. They need to choose one of those terminologies and explain that in their own words and also justify why they chose that one. Very simple steps, but that makes assessment more personal, more memorable, and more fun, right? How are you going with time? I have only 2 minutes. I'll stop sharing examples, although I have so many, and you have the chance today at Caitlin and Molly's workshop to go through more. But thank you so much for being here with me. I'll leave you with a question. I don't know if you have questions in the chat, but think of a moment in your subject where you think that students often feel stuck. How could storytelling reframe that? Did it spark you any ideas? And if you want to talk about that, we are here. We would love to talk to you.